A skillet fruit cobbler is the perfect dessert when you're feeding a crowd, especially after a big meal. All the fruity goodness of a pie without the advanced work of making, rolling, chilling, and pre-baking a pie crust. And a cast iron skillet is the perfect vessel to keep your filling warm until you serve it. By the way, this lesson is from our Cooking with Cast Iron class, out now on ATK Classes on the America's Test Kitchen app. In this class, you'll learn techniques and cook through recipes that highlight cast iron's versatility, from searing to frying to even baking. We'll teach you how to use your cast iron both efficiently and safely, and even share tips for how to care for your skillet. Learn at your own pace and have fun while you do it. But first, let's make a spiced pear cobbler. Let's start with the pears. I'm gonna peel 3.5 pounds of Bosc pears. Now, we're using the variety of Bosc pears because they're great for baking. They're really firm and they retain their texture even when heated. So it's perfect for a fruit cobbler because you're gonna get some of that bite of the pear without it turning to absolute mush or pear sauce. And even though we're using Bosc pears, you can use another variety of pear in this recipe. It just, the texture might be a little bit mushier. And the reason you wanna use a ripe pear, it's gonna be a little bit sweeter. And you'll know it's ripe when you touch it, it will give a little bit. A pear that isn't quite ripe will still be quite firm. So now that my pear's peeled, I'm just gonna cut it. And I've got a melon baller to scoop out the seeds and the core. And I'm gonna cut it into 1/4 inch thick wedges. I grabbed a paring knife just to cut out that fibrous core that you find with pears. And the reason we're cutting these to 1/4 inch thickness, our wedges, they're gonna cook really quickly, and you're gonna see we're gonna actually give them a head start by cooking them on the stovetop in our cast iron and then transferring it to the oven. But they're not so thin that they'll just totally disintegrate and you won't have that nice texture and bite of eating a pear. Our pear is ready, we're gonna move to the stovetop. I've got 3 tablespoons of butter that I'm gonna melt over medium heat. We're making our cobbler in a 12-inch cast iron skillet. Cast iron, it's perfect for this recipe because it goes from stovetop to oven. But if you have an oven-safe stainless steel skillet, you can use that also. It just won't hold that heat in as you're serving it. Cast iron skillets, they're really great at retaining heat and also heating everything really evenly, but it does take a little bit of time for that skillet to heat up. All right, my butter is melting, so I'm gonna add our pears. And I've got 1/2 cup of light brown sugar. I've got 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I've got 3/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cardamom, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And for a little zip, an 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm gonna give this all a gentle stir. And this recipe, other than the pears and the lemon, it's all pantry ingredients. So it's one of those great recipes that you can whip up with pretty much everything that you already have on hand. You'll notice a lot of recipes for fall that use apples or pears, they've got a lot of cinnamon and nutmeg. We're not using either of those spices here. We're using ground ginger and ground cardamom, which are also beautiful, warm, autumnal spices, and they pair perfectly with the pears. And Bosc pears actually naturally have a bit of a spicy aroma to them. So we're further accentuating that and bringing that out with the ginger and the cardamom. So as you can see, my sugar has dissolved and it's even starting to bubble. There's a little bit of simmering happening. So I'm gonna reduce my heat to low. I'm gonna cover it, and you can find lids that fit your cast iron skillet. It's a great thing to have, but if you don't have one, it's fine. You can use a piece of foil or a lid perhaps to another pot that fits reasonably well. I'm gonna let this cook for about 5 minutes. I want my pears to be just tender. And while that's cooking, I'm gonna prepare a slurry. We wanna add a little bit of flour to our pear filling to thicken it. If you've ever made an apple pie or other cobblers, you add cornstarch or flour or something to thicken that filling. So I've got 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I'm not gonna add it directly to our pears because they're hot and already cooking. That flour can kind of clump together. So we're gonna make a slurry. And all that means is we're gonna add a little bit of liquid to that flour so that when we stir it in, we don't have to worry about that clumping. I've got 3 tablespoons of heavy cream and 1.5 teaspoons of lemon zest. And I'm just gonna whisk this together. And you're just whisking it long enough so that you don't see any thick clumps of flour. It's okay if it's a little bit thick. And once my pears are tender, I'm gonna stir this right into our pear filling. It's been about 5 minutes. Let's take a look. These pears are definitely tender. So I'm gonna add our slurry, and the flour in our slurry mixed with the butter is going to thicken and make a really beautiful saucy filling for our pear cobbler. It's definitely starting to dissolve a little bit, and that's what we want. We want that slurry to dissolve into that butter and all of those pear juices and lemon juice. And this is gonna take about 1 minute. All right, it looks like our slurry is dissolved and our filling is starting to thicken. You can see how the filling is clinging to the fruit. It's not liquidy anymore. It's thick like a fruity filling. So I'm gonna turn off the heat and set this aside while we make our topping. With cobblers, you can use a pie crust-like topping. You can use a dumpling-like topping. We're gonna use a dumpling-like topping. It's really more akin to a drop biscuit. And I love this topping for this recipe because you whisk together your dry ingredients, add the liquid, and it goes right on top and is ready for the oven. So I've got 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm gonna whisk my dry ingredients together. And if you've made biscuits, this recipe might sound a little familiar. And the crunchy top of those drop biscuits, it's gonna be a really nice textural complement to that fruity filling of those warm spiced pears. I'm gonna add my liquid ingredients. I've got 1 cup of heavy cream and 5 tablespoons of melted butter. Now the dumpling topping for this, it is a little bit different from a traditional biscuit recipe where it's all about keeping that butter cold. For this, we're dropping our dumpling dough right onto those hot pears. So it's actually gonna start to cook pretty immediately. Then we're gonna transfer it to that hot oven. I'm just lightly bringing these ingredients together. I don't wanna overmix at this point because if you overmix, not only can it make that dumpling topping tough, but it won't rise as much once it's in the oven. This looks great. We're gonna add this to our pears. All right, I'm just gonna use a spoon, and I've got a helper spoon to get the dough out, and drop the dough right on top. You want each one to be about 1.5 inch in size, and you wanna space them out so that you cover the whole cobbler. And one of the great things about this recipe is as it bakes in the oven, that dumpling topping is gonna spread and cover the cobbler to have a beautiful crust. And the goal for these biscuit-like dumplings is that they have a tender center, a crunchy, craggly top, and they've got a bit of salt, which is nice because they're seasoned really nicely, which is important to kind of stand up to that sweet and somewhat spicy pear filling. So we have our dumplings on top and we're gonna transfer it to the oven. Now a cast iron skillet does get hot all over. So to transfer this to the oven, I'm gonna use a dish towel. You can use an oven mitt, and it is pretty heavy, but luckily there's this helper handle. So to be extra careful, I'm gonna use both of these handles as I transfer this to the oven. Our oven is heated to 425 degrees and there's a rack in the center. We're gonna bake this until the tops of those dumplings are golden. It's gonna take 15 to 20 minutes. Look at that bubbling and the aroma of all of those warm spices, the ginger and cardamom and black pepper. It smells incredible, and those crunchy tops on those drop biscuits are going to be perfect with that jammy pear filling. We're gonna let this cool for 10 minutes. Our biscuits will continue to cook and the filling will have a chance to set. And because that handle is super hot, I'm just gonna leave a dish towel right here in case anyone comes by and they wanna grab it. It lets them know that this is really hot. This is cooled for about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and dig in. And I'm just kind of using those toppings as a guide, kind of helps with portion control. Oh, look at that. That crunchy top and that jammy, fruity filling and the smell of the ginger and the cardamom. Oh man, I've already waited 10 minutes. I think I'm ready to try this. The pears, they've retained a little bit of that firmness, so it still has a little bit of bite to it, but it still feels jammy and the perfect amount of sweetness. And that biscuit on top, oh my goodness. I mean, I think either of these would be excellent recipe on their own, but together, this is a phenomenal fruit cobbler. Sweet, juicy pears are the perfect fruit for this delicately spiced cobbler. The warm flavors of cardamom and ginger are heightened with a little black pepper and the bright acidity of lemon. And simple drop biscuits create a cobbler topping that stays tender and fluffy as the top forms a golden crust. But the best part of this deceptively simple dessert, building everything in our trusty cast iron skillet allows it to transition seamlessly from the stovetop to the oven to your table. Now that you've completed this lesson, you're ready to try other things. And with ATK classes, you'll get access to a wide variety of lessons filled with masterful techniques, helpful videos, and step-by-step photos. From knife skills and making hand-rolled pasta, to baking and frosting incredible cakes, and so much more. Download the America's Test Kitchen app and start learning with ATK classes today.